Okay, so one of the things I was fortunate to do was actually track the process as I went through the process, right? So, like, what tends to happen is a lot of people go through the process and they basically complain about the process, or they don't see the meaning in the process. They don't see why God is doing this to them. They usually typically ask the wrong questions, like, well, God, well, why is this happening to me? Or God, well, why did my child have to be the one that was plastered all over the news, that went viral for this tragedy? Why did I have to go homeless? Why did I have to go broke? Like, and some people are ask themselves these questions, and it's like, okay, because while you thought it it's like, okay, while you thought it was punishment, and while everybody probably made you feel like it was punishment, it was preparation. It was the blueprint. It was God, like, okay, you got to go through it to get to it. If you talking about you want to help people get from pain to purpose, it's a process in this thing, okay? You got to actually go through the process. This is more than you just talking. This is more than, you just going through something minor. This is more than that, right? You actually got to walk through the fire. You actually got to be tested. Like, you actually, some things really gotta happen for you to understand, and for you to know, and for you to come out on the other side to be able to show and to be able to teach somebody else what to look for. So I'm like, okay, God never tell you like the full step of, God never tell you like, if you go after this, if you want this gonna happen. You gonna go broke. This gonna happen. You gonna be humiliated. This gonna happen. You not gonna know which way people gonna come up against you. This gonna happen. In a world where you are trained to know roles, where you come in this world full of roles, ready to play roles, mama, daddy, caregiver, whatever you are here, you here to play roles, to fulfill roles, but that's not really why you're here for. You really here for God's purpose. And so when you start asking yourself, certain questions like, well, why did this have to be my child? Why did this have to happen to us? Why did this have to happen? It's like, who else did you want it to happen to? What you think gonna happen? You know what I mean? So when we talking about when we talking about pack purpose and not pain, it's 7 pillars, okay? It's gonna be 7 pillars, right? 7 pillars, and each one of these bags got them in here, right? We gonna have, each bag has a pillar in it. So when we start today, the first pillar is identity. So when we talking about what's in the first bag is identity. So when we're talking about identity, right? Identity is where it begins, right? Identity is where, like, okay, do you know who you are, right? This is where, do you know, like, if you don't know who you is, then they gonna tell you who you is, right? And 9 times out of 10, they telling you who you is, right? If you out here and you not living your full potential, and you not doing what God called you to do, 9 times out of 10, they telling you who you are. 9 times out of 10, you don't know your identity. 9 times out of 10, you fulfilling a worldly role. Okay. Now, this is the problem with identity, right? Now, you supposed to know your identity, right? But we weren't taught our identities, right? We weren't taught who we was. In fact, like, with us, it's a lot of lies going on with who we is, right? So one of the first things we talking about is identity is your anchor, right? You can't get to God's purpose if you don't know who God say you is, right? If you letting the pain tell you who you is, all the pain telling you a bad mama, right? Everybody's telling you a bad mama, maybe because of choice that your child made, right? Or maybe because choices that your kids made or whatever. And so people may say, oh, you are a bad mother, right? And so now you got this identity on you. Now you walking around with this identity, with this role. This is a role. This is a worldly role, because God didn't tell you that was your identity, right? But you letting the pain tell you that that's your identity. You letting the pain tell you that that's who you is. You letting the pain talk for you. You letting the pain shape you. So when we talk about why don't you know your identity? Right? Because like why don't you know your identity, right? Well, first of all, you don't know your identity because you never developed your identity, right? It was like you was born in a world of roles, okay? You was born in a world of roles. Nobody set you down and said, okay, this is what you look for. This is what you need to know. This is how you get to know yourself. This is how you start doing it internally and not externally. This is how you look within. Nobody set you down and told you, right? They built around roles, employees, mom, wife, caretaker, and when these roles disappear, you don't know who the hell you is. Performance. Another reason you can look at people and tell it's a lot of people out here doing things just to prove something for other people. It's a lot of people out here. You could look at them and tell you doing that because your teacher told you were never gonna be nothing. You doing that because that girl who broke your heart told you were nothing. You doing that because that man told you were nothing. You doing something to prove a point. You are performing. You going over and beyond for what you are supposed to be doing. You are performing. And when you perform, you don't know what your identity is. When you perform, you can't hear from God. What you performing? You're performing. You performing because you're trying to prove something to somebody else. Another reason people do not know their identity is because now you done shrunk your identity. You done shrunk your identity to survive, right? You got to pay bills. You got to take care of kids. You got to do all of this stuff. Now you done shrunk who you is. Your gifts don't matter. Right? The things that you once wanted to do don't matter because now you got kids and now you got to fend for your kids. Matter of fact, this is when it do matter. This is when you need to do what you're supposed to do. This is when it matters, okay? This is not when you're supposed to be shrinking yourself. This is not the time for you to be shrinking yourself, especially when you got kids. Especially, like I looked at a video the other day and I saw how they had taken things from back in the day and made these things into corporations. Ideas that came from people that look like me and you, just simple ideas, and they took them and made multi-million-dollar companies, multi-billion-dollar companies with them. Don't shrink yourself. Do not shrink yourself so you can pay bills. What are you going to get out of that? What are you going to do for your kids with that? If you just one problem away from being messed. Borrowing other people's identity, right? This is when the popularity becomes the determining factor in how you move. Who clapping for you? This is when the validation becomes an important factor in how you moving. You taking on other people's identity, you looking at them, you looking at them over there, and you like, well, they doing it, maybe I can do it. They doing it like this, maybe I can do it. And every time you look up, you ditching your idea, right? You ditching what God placed on you, or you ditching something that you want to do because you looking at everybody else and you looking at the popularity and you looking at the validation and you looking at all of the stuff that they made pretend to have, and you idolizing that, and that is a problem, and you borrowing somebody else's identity because that ain't you. That ain't what you're supposed. Your identity is tied to productivity. On what I produce. What? So people think, okay, working and building. If they not working, if they not building, if they not achieving what they think in their man. A lot of people work again. They go off roads. This is why people be like, well, what you do? What you do for a living? They want to know what you do for a living. They want to know because this is how the world measure you, by roles. Okay, and so now you measuring yourself by a role, by who you is. If you a lawyer, doctor, whatever you think you is, you got this title and you think you like, this is in your identity, and that's not your identity. That's a role. And the last one, when it comes to the identity bag. Okay, when it comes to the identity bag of why don't people know their identity? Why is it like, okay, well, how is it so easy for them to tell you who you is? Why? Because you don't really know who you is, right? And you got to get to know who you is, right? That's the thing. But they don't tell you need to get to know who you is. They tell you, well, what's important? Oh, an education is important. An education is not more important than self. Okay? It's not more important than self. And when you don't know who you are inside, that is very dangerous. That is a very, very dangerous thing. Thus why we got a whole bunch of people running around, not knowing who they is, not knowing what they want to do in life, stuck in life, because they don't know their identity. They don't know who they is. They don't believe that they were supposed to. They don't believe they have an identity. They do not believe that they even is allowed to have an identity. Okay? And yeah. If you like, girl, listen, you want to join community, you definitely want to join us. You can text the word purpose to 630-863-3142, 630-863-3142. And that was the first pillar, identity, the first bag, identity. Why people don't really know their identity. All right, just a thought.